We should be going live right about now. I'm just going to wait for a little bit to see if it also shows up on the stream. But this is all looking good. So, welcome everybody to day 3 of the SwiftUI series. Today we're focusing on animations. One of the, in my opinion, biggest like differentiators or things that SwiftUI made a lot easier once you actually get to know how it works. We've got 2 really good judges again today. I'll let them introduce themselves, but let's start with Amos from Finland. Hey Amos, how are you doing?
Hi everyone, my name is Amos or Amos. You
Oh,
can
sorry.
say it in any way. I'm just from Helsinki. So I work with Stream in the iOS DevRel team. So I mainly create developer videos and then create content about documentation as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
On my free times, I like to do a lot of animations using SwiftUI. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people probably saw your Twitter posts over the last year, and I remember every week or so you would just have like this
Yeah.
super fancy animation, and you would have some code there like, oh, made this with SwiftUI. So you were one of the first people I reached out to all the way in March when I was looking
Yeah.
at organizing this. And we'll later on also get into a new app you launched a few weeks ago.
Sure.
Which helps developers like really tune these animations and the timings and everything.
Yeah.
So that should be nice as well. And next to that, we have Rambo, which I think most people in the iOS community probably know. Hey, Rambo, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy that I made it because people who know me will know that I really like animations. So I'm really excited to see what people came up with their solutions. And yeah, I do AirBuddy, which is this app for the Mac. I do Chibi Studio for iOS. I do a bunch of open source things. I have the Stack Trace podcast. And if you listen to that podcast, you will also know that I am a really big fan of animations in user interfaces and cool user interactions. And I've also been doing a lot of that with SwiftUI, which is just so much fun. And
Hmm.
yeah, really happy to be here.
Nice, yeah. I remember when Everybody came out, especially the Everybody 2, I guess it was the update, and you had all these little micro animations and all these little subtle things when you click on stuff or when stuff animates or when you connect or disconnect. So yeah, I think super clear example of how these small animations can make the whole app feel more premium, more like human as well with how it responds to your action. So yeah, super glad that you're here as well. So today we've got five submissions. There were some issues with one of the submissions, but that should be fixed now because they just did a new push. So as yesterday and the day before, what's actually nice is that 2 minutes after starting, we already got our first bot. But luckily, Kuba is keeping um, keeping an eye on the chat, so that should all be good. Um, so yeah, today the animations event, and the focus for the animations event was a challenge that Amos made like a few weeks ago, which really focuses on these micro animations. So basically, the challenge is to recreate an animation similar to what you're seeing here, the like notification, the like animation on Twitter, or the clap animation over at Medium. And these are really clear examples of you can just have a super simple component and then just add this little flair to this one little thing. The rest of your app can still stay normal, so to say, but it can really have a nice effect because if you go through your Twitter feed, it's just a regular list. But then every time you tap on that like button, there's like this little spark of joy there. So um, it wasn't necessarily the intention that you recreate this entire screen or this entire animation, but we wanted people to come up with their own flair on that, and it seems like most people did. So let's start with this entry by Flo. Uh, I know he's not watching live right now, so we can be super critical because I know he likes to get like as much feedback as possible. So he considers himself a beginner. He's not necessarily a beginner in SwiftUI, but in terms of animations, yeah, he's still trying to get the hang of that. So let me open his project, and then maybe we can just have a little look at how he approached that. Let's see. I'll bump up the font size a bit and actually run it as well.
Launching Xcode in a live stream, what could go wrong, right?
Nothing at all. Nothing at all.
Let's see.
All right, and let's see if the simulator works as well. Yes. All right, so we should be able to see both side by side right now. So they're a bit tiny, so I'm gonna make them a bit bigger so we can actually have a look. And it seems that Flow actually was recreating the Twitter animation and the Medium animation. They're pretty one to one. And you can see it's a bit more simple than the more advanced ones, but yeah, it still gets the point across. So maybe we can have a look at them one by one and just yeah, whatever comes in your mind, just tell us. So what we see here is basically two images in a Z stack. Little scale effect based on the animation state variable, and then some funky random offset stuff. So yeah, what do you think about this approach?
From my side, I like the random stuff. Like anytime you tap on the icon, then it shows the splash animation with the random small circles, which is really nice. I also like the simplicity of the whole animation. And then one thing I didn't like was when the small circle shows. I think in the end, he could use opacity animation or by scaling the circles down so that they all just disappear. Yeah. But I really like the animation and the easing as well.
Yeah, that's the only thing I'm missing as well visually in this heart animation is like a more defined end, I guess, to it. But I think adding randomness to animations, of course, it has to be controlled randomness. You have to be careful not to like explode stuff all over the place. But I mean, maybe that's what you want. But in this case, I think it's a good use of randomness to give it something extra and something different when the user is interacting with the component. And I think the good thing about these micro animations is really the reward that the user gets when they're doing something in your app. And that's why you see, and there's also like a kind of a dark side to it, because you see these social media apps, they add like super cool animations and haptics to the like button because they want people to be liking a lot of stuff. But in general, like most of us here are not doing those types of apps. And I think being able to introduce some reward like that to a user interaction is definitely something you want. And the randomness can give it a little bit of an extra bit of reward because it's not always exactly the same. In terms of the implementation, I also like that it looks like with very little code, they were able to achieve a quite good result, and that's always a good thing as well. And of
Yeah.
course, we're not like going to be reviewing whether you could put this in production or anything. Like this is just a little prototype that someone did. So in general, I think I like the simplicity of the implementation.
So Amos, you mentioned that like there's no end state, right? It just ends, and then I guess that's because he's just toggling the state variable. So what would be an approach to at the end of this animation, like automatically make it like shrink again or something, or to instead of having to click it manually?
In that case, you can use with animation and then set some delay, like when the animation ends within maybe 0.2 second or 0.1 second, you can just animate the opacity from 1 to 0, then it will just disappear.
Okay, so I guess something like this, and then we would say
I think 1 is too long, maybe 0.2 or 0.5 or something.
I'm really bad at animation stuff, so it's, it's not even doing anything now.
You broke it.
Yeah, because this is actually a thing I struggle with as well when I try to do animation, that I never really fully understand what gets run at what time, and I get into these things where I have an animation on one screen, and then all of a sudden when a user goes to a separate screen, all of the content in that screen will just like start animating as if it's animated by that other thing.
I'm sure. So one of the things that I think SwiftUI is missing in terms of animation, and let's see if Amos agrees, is a completion handler, basically. And I kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
understand
true.
why it's complicated, because we're talking about a declarative framework, and a completion handler is basically a very imperative thing, like do this when the animation
Mhm.
finishes, and that's
This
just
lens,
not
like,
how it
yeah,
works with SwiftUI. There
yeah,
are ways to do it with like your custom animatable thing, but it's
yeah, sure.
more complicated than it should be, I think. And I like as well, if you scroll up a bit, there's a state property that's an array of booleans. And if I'm understanding correctly, did they use that as like a way to kind of like create keyframes in the animation? Is that what it's doing? Because I found that really interesting. I never used that particular technique before.
Hmm. Yeah, it kind of looks like
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
I think me too. It was my first time to just see that, and then I was more interested to just look around and then go more into detail about it. It's quite interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
basically,
it's interesting.
when the user clicks on the little clap icon, then both of these booleans get toggled. But because they're different animations based on the different values, yeah, there's like a delay basically, like
Yeah,
a delay without having to do any of the with animation stuff. So
that's cool.
you do
Yeah.
notice that like once you click it again, it like reverts itself in a wrong way. But I guess that's similar to what we had here with the heart. So
Hmm.
if either of you would make an animation like this, would you do the same approach? Or would you do something else?
I'll do it in a similar approach, and then one thing I will do different is the easing equation. I'm just talking about the heart icon. So
Hmm.
as you tap on the heart icon, then it will animate into view. So which means the blue heart icon is just gaining attention. So the right or the suitable easing equation will be ease out, not easing out. Um, so like if you have an object which oscillates on the screen, like moving left and right, then
Hmm.
maybe it goes like moving randomly left and right, or
Yeah.
it just rotating on the screen back and forth. Then you have to use easing out. But for an object that gains attention, then it is good to use ease out. That will
Yeah.
just improve an animation a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I see the same as well. And if I were to do something like this, my initial implementation would probably look a lot like this one. Um, but of course, after that, I would probably clean things up a bit. But the challenge in this case was not cleaning it up; was making it work.
Hmm.
So yeah, I would probably like extract some computed properties with some of the magic values and things like that. And the thing I did when I had to do the kind of like fake keyframing stuff that we mentioned with the Boolean array is I'll use an enum where each case represents a stage of the animation, and then I'll iterate through like the different states with each of them having like their own animation curve and delays and things like that. But of course, that's something you do after you get things working, which is what they've done here. It's not
Hmm.
how you start usually.
No, no, no. All right. Well, I think really good first entry, and especially for someone who claims to not do animation that much, I think this is a really good first step to try and play around and understand how it works in SwiftUI, and also a clear example of only with a few lines of code you can actually make something that actually feels like animated and as if thought was put in there. So good job, Flo. Then we'll go to Brian, and I'm gonna have to look there because there was some issues with the latest branch. So I think I should have the newest version here now. Uh, thumbs up main. Mm, yeah, so he linked to a repo that didn't have the correct thing set up, but I think I should still have the good the entry
I
here.
saw someone mention in chat, I think it was Ryan, that the animation thing in SwiftUI, maybe it could be async. And I think, yeah, that would be an interesting approach to have it be async. It would do the same thing basically as something like a completion handler, but it would
Yeah.
feel more, I guess, modern in that way.
I think I saw one example like that in one of the entries.
Interesting.
Let's have a look. So in the meantime, I've managed to get their code running. So this is a bit different in terms of what the animation actually is, but it's a thumbs up animation with some similar stuff that we had before. But there's more stuff going on there. So let's have a look. Let's clean this up a bit. Stump animation view, just so we know what we're looking at. So nice little feedback thing, lots of stuff going on. So let's have a look at the code piece by piece. I'll make this a bit larger. So we start with, let's start with the confetti, because it's a bit similar to what Flow had as well. I guess the confetti is confetti view, and that, oh, what are we looking at here? Is this the right one?
I love the name of the modifier, Confettify. Love it. I guess the whole thing is in that modifier there, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so too. And then this one.
Yeah, looks like that's the case. Interesting.
So maybe you can walk us through what's going on here.
Yeah, so it looks like they've implemented the confetti as a modifier. So and this is something that people, especially people who are just getting started with SwiftUI, they don't use their own modifiers or don't create their own modifiers that much. And in reality, a view modifier in SwiftUI is pretty much like a view itself. It's just a specialized type of view that wraps another view that you've applied the modifier to. And it's very common as well that we don't access the modifier type itself. We use like this, like you have on line 38 there, you have an extension on view, and there's this confettify method that returns a modified view. So most of the time, at least when I implement my own modifiers, I would have even made like the confetti view modifier private, that type, because it's just basically an implementation detail. But what you can do with modifiers in SwiftUI is basically implement this really neat way of wrapping something in another view, and the modifier can have its own states and it can do its own animations and whatnot. So that's what they've done here. So they're creating these random pieces of confetti, which are the actual content you're applying the confettify modifier to. And what that achieves in this case is that your confetti can be whatever you want. And I think that's a really clever way to do it. So if I want rectangular confetti, I can have it. If I want a triangle, if I want a circle, and as you can see there, they're using rectangles, but they have different colors and stuff. So yeah, really like that approach.
Yeah, so you can see here now it's only yellow confetti pieces, and this could basically be anything, right? Could be a circle as well. I'm not sure you're going to be able to see it at this size, but
I guess it could even be like a UI view controller representable or something.
maybe a
A lot of
map view.
customization.
Oh, don't
Uh,
do that. We're
no, no,
live.
that's going to just crash everything. Yeah, so I think that the modifier is a nice different approach, like compared to what Flow is doing, because all of the logic is just there, and you don't have any animation code going on in your main view. Um, Amos, is there anything you want to mention about the confetti before we move on to some of the other things that are going on here?
Uh, I think I like the way it shows, and then it will just disappear with opacity. Also, I don't I didn't see how the animation. Yeah, they just use this opacity to just remove it as well, which looks really nice to
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love it.
And so what are they doing here with the duration minus the time? Where does that time thing come in?
I
So
think he set it
basically, yeah, go
on
ahead.
the top. The initial time is set to 0, and
Hmm.
then at the end of the animation they also
Ah, yeah.
subtract that one from
Yeah.
the total time. Yeah.
Sort of
That's
a
a really clever
completion.
thing.
Yeah.
You can use a boolean, of course, like we've seen in the previous example, but in this case you have a basically a double, so you get the effect of having the progress of the animation reported to you, basically, which is
Yeah.
what's happening here. And it's also really clever technique that you do have to use sometimes, like in this case where you really want to customize how things progress over time, and it's a way to implement like a timeline approach to your animations without using something like the actual timeline view type that's been
Yeah.
introduced. So yeah, really clever.
Yeah. Very nice. So I'm just gonna comment out the confetti just to give us a bit more focus on the rest of what's going on. So let's start with a little thumbs up bouncy thing. Um, yeah, how are they doing that? Just the tapped function.
I think at first they rotated downward, and then by setting the rotation to, I think, a negative value, and then uh, they are also after that it is just rotating. They just switch it to an angle of 45. That is why it just jump up uh, upward like that. Yeah.
Where's the rotation happening for the start? Like this first thing. Is that this one?
The, over here it is using ternary conditional operation. So if you go up, I think he's set it somewhere to be true or false. Let me see, rotate up. Yeah. So
Yeah,
you can
okay.
see they have just defined rotate up to be true. So
Hmm.
when the condition is true,
It's
they rotate
yeah.
the thumb to an angle of 0, and when the condition is false, it is
Hmm.
rotated at an angle of 45.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they start out rotated basically, but they undo that, and with the animation they undo it, which
Yeah.
is a bit confusing to think about, but it's a tip I gave when I was doing my talk about animations, which is to always start with the resting state of the animation. Always think about your end state, and then you go backwards and develop the animation from that, because if you try to start from what the animation ends up being like when it's animated, you might end up with inconsistencies and a more difficult implementation at the end. So I always like to think of animations as the way they end and not the way they start, basically.
Smart. So they start this animation quite normal, but then at the end you can see the springy effect, and that's actually done here, where they actually do the animation. And this might be a good example also to show motionscape, because there's all these different values that you can tweak there. So I know, Amos, that you do a lot with that. Rambo, do you use these spring animation timings as well, or do you stick to other ones?
Oh yeah, I'm a real big fan of springs, and something about springs, which Amos of course knows because he seems to be an expert, is that they don't have to be bouncy necessarily.
Yeah.
But even if a spring animation is not bouncy, the effect that it gives is usually of a more natural transition of state. It's more natural than the like mathematical curves. Not that a spring is not a math equation; it's also just a math equation, but it's more natural. It feels more natural to us humans when something animates with a spring, even if it doesn't bounce.
Yeah. So this app is Motionscape, which is actually made by Amos and his colleague Stefan. Is it Stefan, right? Is that how you pronounce it?
Oh yeah, Stefan.
Yeah.
He is called Stefan.
Okay, okay. So, and this app is like you made this to be able to actually tweak these without having to change the numbers all the time. So, um, yeah, I just put in the values that they're using here in the animation. Maybe you can tell a little bit more about like why you built this and what's the idea behind it?
So mostly, anytime I build some animation for SwiftUI, like there wasn't any way to just preview the animations easings, like when to use ease out or ease in out or ease in. Then you cannot preview this animation before you just commit to use them in SwiftUI. So we just wanted a visual way where you can just test a different animation values like the speed, like the total duration, and then after that you can just copy those animation values, and then you just replace your SwiftUI easing with how they look in MotionScape. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was the main reason that we built this application.
Yeah, so I'm not sure
Nice.
if the person who made this actually used that, but you can definitely imagine that they spend a lot of time tweaking this to get it just right, to have it not be over bouncing. So let's say you put this to 5, I think I was, or 4. I was just trying to break it a little bit. You'll like here now it just feels like a little limpy hand. But
So
these not these.
here
Hmm?
it's like if you want to control, I think it controls the bounciness of the animation, the response, and dampen fraction. So if you increase the response, then the bounciness will also increase as well. And then if you want to achieve the same thing with dampen fraction, then you have to reduce the value instead of increasing it.
Hmm. Yeah, so I definitely recommend this tool for anyone who's trying to understand it more, because it just makes it much more easy to understand what you're actually changing when you can change it on the fly. And you could also have like
Yeah,
a
for these
slider.
sorts of things, you have to preview it. Like you can't be
Just
guessing numbers
no.
basically. Like after some time, you get used to like, oh, this about this range will look about like I want it to look like. But yeah, if you really want to tweak things, you have to use a tool like this one, or use like, if like you mentioned, like you put up some sliders, and it's so
Mm,
easy like with SwiftUI to just like put up some sliders where you can tweak things. So do that, because yeah, it's really hard to come up with those numbers.
yeah, off
In
the top of
terms
your head.
of, for this animation, it works really well to have a more bouncy spring. If you're doing an animation that's more directly tied to user interaction, I would usually go for way higher response and damping values, because that gives you a more controlled spring with less bounce. But in this case, it works to be really bouncy.
Yeah, looks really nice. And so the last thing, which I
Uh,
think is a quite simple one, is this little badge that when you click flies up, and they're doing a classical if true, then show the badge, and otherwise don't. But we have another nice modifier here, the floatify modifier. So he got creative there with his words. Um, so yeah, what's going on here?
Oh, they're using a geometry effect. I've never used one of those myself.
I've also never even heard of them. So maybe do you know a little bit about what they are? I guess
which one?
the geometry effect. So they're applying a geometry effect to the badge view basically.
Yeah,
Uh,
I've
No,
heard about them and I've seen
I haven't
examples,
used
but
it
I
as
never
well.
used. Yeah, but basically what it does is it's a specialized type of modifier that you use to transform the view it's applied to over time, like they're doing here. And it doesn't have to be over time, but in this case it is. So you think of like scale, rotate, those modifiers. They could, in theory, be implemented as geometry effects. So basically, it's a modifier that will give a transform that will be used to modify the
mm,
view. You basically return the projection transform like you're seeing there, and it transforms the view. Yeah. So it's really useful and powerful. I never used it because I never had never felt the need to, but I think it was a good way to do it in this case.
yeah, and it's also a nice different example of that you can do these animations in so many different ways. Because you could have also just done an offset with Y and then just whenever a state variable changes, then animate that offset. But here you have much more control. You can do more fancy things. So yeah, I think a really nice, nice second entry there. Let's move on to number 3, which is by
By
Stefan
the way,
actually.
Ryan mentioned something in the chat that I think is important to note. Those dispatch async after things, they are a way that people do in SwiftUI, and I do that myself, to have like a way to delay things, or have a way to implement like kind of like completion handlers. But you have to be careful, especially when it involves user interaction, because you're not canceling those dispatch asyncs when stuff changes. So you can have
They stack
yeah,
up.
like you mentioned, you can stack up things in a race condition type ways where things break. So if you're doing this for like a production thing, which definitely wasn't the case here, so that's perfectly fine. You can use something like a dispatch work item, and then if the animation is invalidated, like if the person clicks the button again, you can cancel your work items that are going to be dispatching new animations, and that fixes the problem basically, so you don't have these stacking of things out of order.
Thanks for the reminder of that, Ryan, and thanks for the explanation, Rambo. I'm not sure everyone was aware of that, and especially one of those things that looks really good when you first make it, but then if someone starts stepping on it multiple times, it might like mess everything up. So be aware of that. This third entry is actually by Stefan, so the Amos's colleague who also worked on Motionscape. So I'm expecting a lot here. Let's see. So yeah, I think I saw a preview of this yesterday already, where he did some fancy stuff with the different colors, and then for the clapping animation, he actually made the hands like do a little clap thing there, which I think is really nice. So let's have a look at the code, and that's somewhere in here.
I'm really curious about this one because the clapping animation looks really fancy.
Maybe Amos, you already got like a little sneak preview of how he did it, or did you have a confidentiality agreement there with Stefan not to talk about it beforehand?
He told me he just sent the entry, but he didn't mention anything about it.
All right. So which one do we want to start with, Twitter or the medium clap?
I think the heart looks simpler.
All right,
so
let's
maybe
start
with that one.
Let's start with the simple stuff then. So okay, what are we looking at? Well, some values here, not in the code anymore, but like separated, which is always nice when you want to tweak stuff. Yeah, so what are we looking at here?
Yeah, so it looks like they are duplicating basically the heart and using different scales and rotations and things like that to achieve that effect. With if you click the heart, you see that it kind of like multiplies into like a multiverse of hearts, and they all have different sizes and different colors even. Are they using blend modes at all? Not sure if they are.
The U
I
rotation.
think he's using the hue rotation from an angle of 0 to 360.
Yeah. So there's that randomness aspect we talked about before as well, which gives it this little extra flair. So, and again, like if you look at the code, it's very little code, and I think it's all in this file, right? So it looks very simple.
There's some calculations going on here, but yeah, that's just to clean it up, I guess. But what's interesting is when the heart becomes smaller, you can see that the heart also like rotates in different directions. It even goes upside down at some point.
There might be I don't know what their intent was, but it looks like a bug actually, where like the scale is going into the negative numbers, so it's
Mm,
flipping the heart. Um, Not sure if
let's
that
see.
was their intention or not, but probably like some value that's exceeding the like minimum that it should be.
Yeah, and then as a result, because it's using like the spring animation, that will cause it to over go past the
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So
Yeah.
let's say we put it to 0.4, maybe that will fix that particular thing. Yeah. Then obviously you get
Yeah,
different
it's
issues,
like
but
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. Is there a way to, well, I guess when you're using a spring, by definition, it will go over the value that you want it to end
It
up at.
doesn't
So
have to. You
no?
can have an over dampened spring, and
Mm,
if you damp it really high, I think if you go like past like 0.85 of damping or something like that, it probably won't. I'm not sure if using a value higher than 1 for damping will work necessarily, but yeah, that might work. It depends also on the other parameters. But yeah, you have to be careful with springs because sometimes a value might go beyond the bounds you expect because you're telling it to go to this value, but the spring will make it go over that
mm,
value. So, and sometimes I do remember working with something like that in back when I was just using UIKit, and I had a crash in the app, which was related to an animation with a user interaction where if someone like flicked a thing super fast, it was using the velocity to calculate like the spring animation, and like a CA layer would end up having a negative height or something, and that would crash the app. So you do have
mm.
to be careful with springs in that sense.
All right, yeah, and I think other than that, it's like a unique animation as well. But it does the same kind of effect by just by layering these five hearts on top of each other with some different offsets. It feels very like random. It feels playful. It's always different every time because of the randomness. So, yeah, definitely a really good approach there as well.
Yeah.
So
One
let's
thing I
have.
would do differently is how the hearts at the back of the main one just themselves, like introducing a little delay, like showing one after the other will look really nice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll leave that up to the viewer to do for themselves tonight after this live stream.
I have a
Um,
tip for that. If you have a sequence of things where
Yeah,
you have
yeah,
an
like
index,
sequence, yeah.
which is the case in there, you can do some. I'm not gonna give the answer because that would be too easy, but there are some
Sure.
modifiers in SwiftUI, and there is this thing called a transaction. So transaction, keep that in mind and look that up. I think you can achieve that. It's I wouldn't say easy, but it's a way to do it that doesn't make your code all messy, and you don't have to do like these weird calculations and stuff. So yeah, keep that in mind.
Good one. All right, let's have a look at the median. So the top stuff, just variables that are probably being used further down. So I'm just first going to scroll past to see what we have here. A few hands. So it's actually, this is a double hand icon, right? But once the animation starts, you can see that it's only one hand because I saw a version yesterday that had two hands. So there was actually four hands clapping. So always be aware of those small details as well. Then there's a gradient that's going on that's actually masked to a hand as well that creates this gradient effect we have here. And then we have some sparkles at the end. So I'm just going to remove the sparkles for now, and you can have a look there. And when the user taps on it, some values get changed, which actually starts some of these animations here. There's a lot of stuff going on. So where should we start? Can you still read the
Well,
text now,
looks
or
like
should I
we
keep?
have. Yeah, I'm I'm able to see it. It looks
Okay.
like we have once again the dispatch async after trick for like a keyframe like animations, which I don't think you could avoid in this case because it's a very keyframey type animation. There's very
Mm.
specific states in the animation that there's really no like native way in SwiftUI to represent that. You could probably create some abstraction around it. I've been thinking about doing that actually, but I haven't. Yeah, I think this was the solution in this case. Maybe in a couple of weeks we'll see like keyframe animation support in SwiftUI. Maybe that would be cool. But
Yeah.
I think that was the way to do it here in this case.
Yeah, and so that's being used here so that the sparks actually show up after a certain amount of time, right? And the same with
Yeah,
the
and also
gradient, I
other
guess.
aspects of the animation, and I like that they have used like the duration of the animation as a way to calculate the delays. That's obviously better than just hard coding a delay that works, because if you tweak other things in your animation, you want the delay to match. So that's
Mhm.
always good.
Yeah. And so basically what happens, the hands, they do this rotation thing. And they're using the 3D rotation 3D effect there. Amos, have you used that before?
I have used 3D rotation before. Yeah.
Yes. So can you tell a little bit, like, because I think it's something that unless you do it well, it can also really quickly mess up your animation because it will just look just moving around in 3D space a lot. But as you can see here, it
Yeah.
can create
So,
like a really fun,
so
playful thing.
over here, I think he just defined the rotation angle somewhere at the top, and then he just setting the x coordinate to 0, and then only animating the y axis. So it will just be animating on the only y, not x at all.
Hmm.
That is why he's just getting this effect. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's just multiple animations going on at the same time. The X offset of the hands is changing while it's
Yeah.
3D rotating. So I can only imagine
Yeah.
how
I
much
think
time
he
went
also
into
set
tweaking.
the x somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, so probably a lot of tweaking there. And then at
Yeah.
the end, we have this like fun little spark thing, which, yeah, let's see what's going on there. So it's,
Also, just now I noticed that if you can you click it again. So when the animation finishes, or the gradient that fills the icon actually animates from just transition to the gradient. Can
hmm
you see that?
yeah, it
Yeah.
So
animates from the top.
I think over there he set this property I think auto reverses to true. That is why it animates backward. So if you look at the hand animation, I think there should be a property
Hmm.
somewhere.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
it's interesting that once
Yeah.
you start, the gradient just disappears, and then at the end, it animates back. So
it will just animate back. Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah. But I really like, because and I guess this was the intended effect, that the stuff shoots out from above the hand icon, and then when the two hands they
Ah,
fall down, the
yeah,
gradients,
comes
it's
back
kind of
again.
like they are
The
entering
source,
the
yeah,
hand, and yeah,
it's so
feeling it,
clever.
and the
yeah,
colors match and all of that. Yeah, that's really nice,
a
and
little
it's
detailing.
those types of details that most people don't look at, but that look really great. Yeah, I really like it.
Yeah, I wonder if Stefan had all these things thought out, or if it's just a nice side effect. But it definitely shows some attention to detail there and getting all these things synced up. And so for the sparkle at the end, I'm just gonna hide the hands for now so we can focus on them a little bit. Um, which is actually also like just reusing an existing shape, the sparkle shape in SF symbols, and then yeah, just rotating it, scaling it up, changing the offset a little bit so that it actually moves, like very slightly moves down, I think. Oh, 110 even. So where is it coming from? Hmm. Oh yeah, so it moves up a little bit. So by stacking some of these modifiers, you can create something that looks really complex, even though it's very simple, right? It's just moving some things at the same time. And then by iterating over 0 to 5, you can actually have a little different rotation for each of the elements. You could do the same thing, for example, for the offset, where let's say you would take this live coding, always good idea. Not sure what's going to happen now. Uh, So
Wow.
obviously you wouldn't use this like this, but that's just a very easy way to make something feel like um, more grand than just having one little thing animate. So yeah, like a
Yeah.
lot of really nice approaches here, and a lot of stuff that people, especially beginners, I think that want to do more at the same time, like really can play around with, because yeah, there's just a lot to play here with. So great job, Steph. Thanks for your entry.
By the
Can
way,
you
while you've
remove
done that,
the y offset from the first offset, and let's see how it looks.
Which
The
which
y
which
offset.
which one? Where?
He has two offsets here. So the first one, can you remove the y value, and let's see how it will look.
interesting.
Okay.
No. The y.
Sorry, which
For the
one?
first
Which line?
the first offset, the one on the top.
This one.
So if you
Change y to 0.
yeah, or just remove it at all. Yeah.
So okay, like this. Okay, I was gonna try.
Yeah, keep the x. Yeah. Ah,
Oh
so
yeah.
that's what's going on.
Yeah. All right.
All right,
Yeah.
let me
Okay.
grab the next entry.
By the way, what we're doing here of like changing values and seeing what happens is a great way to learn, and I highly recommend it to especially people who are uh, just beginners and they don't know anything about SwiftUI or SwiftUI animations. Grabbing these projects and playing around with the values and commenting things out and adding new things to see what happens is a fantastic way for you to learn, because you don't have to worry about all of the things around it. You only tweak stuff to see what it does. I think is a really great learning tool, really.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So here we have the next
Oh,
entry
this one.
by Francesco, I think. Yeah, Francesco Marini. Let's have a look. We're gonna drink some beer. So it kind of reminds me of the second entry we had, where there's a bunch of stuff going on, also with the badge flying up. So let's have a look at how they achieve that. Let's start with the beer. Let's start with the beer. Um, so it's a Z stack for the circle, and then there's just two images of beer on top of that, and the mug angle. So there's most of the stuff is going on in a view model. Let's have a look what's going on there.
Love the constants abstracted as a separate type. That's really good. I one thing I will recommend though is not starting out with that, because if you're using SwiftUI update automatically when you change constants like that, so maybe start out with the magic values or with computed properties, and then later you do this. But yeah, absolutely. After you're done tweaking stuff, extracting it away to like a constant thing like they've done here is highly recommended.
All right, so let me have a look at what actually happens. So yeah, so all the logic is in this view model, and all these views here, they just get their values from this view model. So I guess we're gonna have a look there what actually changes. If I can actually go there, let's see. Okay, I'm just gonna do it manually then, Xcode, if you don't want me to do it that way. So button taps. First off, we send the animation, and then like this boolean to notify it to other places probably that the animation is still going on. The counter is going up, and then we've got some spring stuff going on again. Let's see.
It's actually a different type of spring, which is the interpolating spring, which it better matches if people are used to using springs in like core animation. this is more like that rather than the simplified Spring you get in SwiftUI, which I do prefer most of the time, but I have converted some of my animations from core animation to SwiftUI, which had springs, and then you can map directly, basically from like a CA Spring animation to
Mm.
an interpolating Spring because the
You can use the
values are the
same.
same.
Okay, yeah, nice. So yeah, I guess it starts with just putting them out to the side first, right? So this +1 scale stuff is all related to the stuff going on here at the left, because there's this little one animation that pops up. Um, yeah, very similar to what we've seen before, I think. Yeah, also nothing super crazy going on here. Let's have a look at the beers. So, oh, so actually the shadow also changes. There's one little detail where probably could be more subtle maybe, but like you can have this basic animation and these other things in the background that also animate to make it feel more complete. So I think it's really nice there as well. A little delay to make the beers animated in a different way, or it's still the gradient actually, or the background. And then I guess the mug angle is the angle that the beers change in.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Curious how they did the bubbles. So I guess it's just a true or false here, but where are they actually making these bubbles? And
I think they have this bubble modifier. Yeah.
yes. Yeah, so a bit similar to what we had with the Confettifier, but now the bubbles modifier. So it starts from a circle and then yeah, just very similar to what we had before there. The duration is how long it takes for it to animate before it like fades out. Um, it's interesting to see the same kind of approach, but there's some differences here in the actual implementation. So people can actually like look at both of these projects and just have a look and see how they got to the same effect or maybe a different effect, and how they can maybe take some from one project and put it in the other, and actually yeah, discover like what Rumble was saying before. Um,
I think they should have called the bubbles modifier Bubblify,
Bubblify,
right?
Like the other one.
Michael Bubblify.
Yeah, true.
No, yeah, I think also really cool example with a lot of stuff going on. So great job there. And let's.
There's sine and cosine stuff in there. Fancy maths.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to dig deeper into what that's actually doing at some point. But let's move on to our last entry of the day, which is by Ryan. And Ryan made a little defibrillator heart. So let me open that up here. And yesterday, Ryan had really good documentation for his workarounds submission. So I'm expecting nothing less today, Ryan. So if you're watching, no pressure. He's actually using a framework that he made. So as long as he made it himself, I guess it's technically allowed according to the rules, even though there are not really rules here. Um, but yeah, it seems like he's doing something similar to what you had before, Ramo, with the keyframes and the enum there. Um, so yeah, let's see if it actually runs.
I
bet it
think
will.
Xcode failed to resolve the dependency. Try again, maybe.
Yeah.
Which, by
Right.
the way, it never gets it the first time for me. I always have to go and tell it to resolve package versions and whatnot.
I don't know. For me, mostly it works well. So I'm quite surprised that you have it every time.
It's almost every time. Like if there's a Swift package, it will be like, oh, can't resolve this, and I'll
Hmm.
click the button and then it will just work.
Hmm. All right. Let's see what we have here. We have a little heart, a little
Oh,
the fancy
Nice.
like the lightning animation, and now the heart's working again. Let me see if we can. Yeah, we can kill it. But that so let's
Love the
see.
little zap thing.
Yeah, in the middle, right?
Yeah, really nice. And I don't know about what you guys think, but to me, this looks very much like the style of the both the graphics and the animation. It looks like something that could be in like a educational app for children or something.
Hmm. Yeah,
It looks like cartoony but not in a bad way, in a really good way.
in an
So
informative
really
way.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, really look like what it looks like.
So to start here, they have this defib heart view that they just have an on tap gesture on. I'm curious, why did they do it like this? Why didn't they just put the on tap gesture stuff in the defib heart? Do you have any idea? I don't really think it's used anywhere
Sorry,
else.
you cut out a little bit.
Oh,
What was
sorry.
the question?
So the why do you think they put all this stuff here and not just in the defib heart view itself? Because it's not really being used anywhere, right? Or is there a reason for doing that?
I guess they wanted the defib heart to be
More
like a
generic.
component that you
Mm,
can reuse in other
yeah, true.
contexts. So yeah, the actual interaction is implemented outside. Yeah, I
Mm,
guess that makes sense.
yeah. All right. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. Um, let's just first look at the body view actually. Um, so there's two pedals, which are these two things we got here. Then we have a set stack for the heart. I guess one of them is just the outline, and one of them is the filled one, um, which is cool. Like you can see that the fill depends on if we're in the zap keyframe. So I'm curious to have a look at that. And if the keyframe is bigger than contact, that basically means that uh, all this stuff is done, and then it goes into a certain state, I guess, where it just keeps looping for a bit. But yeah, maybe we can have a look at the enum stuff, and then maybe Rambo, you can maybe tell us a little bit more about this approach.
Yeah, it's a really nice way to get sort of keyframes in SwiftUI in a declarative fashion. So they have these keyframes enum that defines the different states of the animation, and as you can see, they have conformed the keyframe enum to comparable, which means that they can do less than, greater than, and those types of comparisons. Because with the keyframe, usually
Mm,
you want to know, am I at or past this time in the animation, this keyframe? And if I am, then I'll change the state of the view to be what it is, or in this case, not change the state, but tell SwiftUI that it should be at this state because it's declarative. And then they have a bunch of properties where they switch over basically
mm,
what keyframe it is and then return the right value for that particular keyframe. And as you can see there, before the duration, the property that comes before it, there are values that repeat for different keyframes, which is also something that's fairly common in these types of animations. So paddle offset at the start and the end, it's the same value. So they
mm,
combine those and all the other states as well. So yeah, it's a fairly clean way to have a keyframe animation of sorts in SwiftUI. I'm curious though how they are actually advancing the keyframes. I think it's in the start animation there.
yeah. So let's see. So there's actually some nice logging going on as well, which is
Hmm.
nice to see. So let's see what we see here.
It looks like they're doing a similar technique to what I've mentioned before, which is to have each keyframe declare both how long it should take and also how long it should wait before it arrives at that keyframe, which you
Mm,
could declare manually or you could calculate based on the duration of the keyframes that come before it. And they basically just tell SwiftUI to perform animations changing the value of the keyframe state property to the keyframe with the animation and the delay that the keyframe itself declares. So basically that's all of the code in there.
Mhm.
The for loop in there is the magic
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. So because it as like a cleaner way of saying, okay, after 2 seconds, do animation two, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's basically a way to abstract that. So
Yeah.
really clever solution, and something that hopefully we get like a native way to do this. But
Hmm.
I mean, this works and it's perfectly fine. I don't see any problem with this. It's just
Yeah.
quite a bit of work, basically.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to do this for every small animation in your app, but if you have, for example, I can, what you were saying, like I could imagine this being sort of a starting animation for a section in the app if it's about like a defibrillation or something, or maybe even the launch animation. That's definitely where you want to have these more complex this complex approach. I'm actually curious, Ryan, if you're in the chat, if you use this approach for all your animations in your apps, or if you only do that for certain complex ones. Then we have the defib paddle here. They actually made the paddle all in SwiftUI, I think, or not? Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
looks
so
like they're doing that.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
bonus points for that, even though, damn, that's actually also super impressive. Um, yeah, so I think this entry was really nice with the whole enum stuff, because we were talking about it before. So I think this is really nice that we actually get to see it in action there.
Yeah.
So I think for people who are starting with these animations, look at some of the simpler ones that we showed before, and then definitely have a look at this to see how you can ramp this up and how you can actually yeah, go further with this. Um, but yeah, I think we went through a lot of interesting stuff here. A lot of I learned a lot at least. So yes, thanks so much for all the entries. So while we technically don't have any prizes, we still like to choose some winners. Yesterday we had three winners. The day before we had four. So I think today let's pick two. Um, um, so yeah, is there anything that stood out for either of you, or anything you'd want to nominate?
Can we have a look at
We,
them
we can
again,
have we
just
can have
to
a look at all of them
yeah,
one by one. Yes, let me.
just to
Yeah.
be sure that we
Only
don't forget any?
the previews. Yeah.
All right, so we started with Flo's one, which started to recreate the actual like and clapping animations, and I think that really showed how simple it is. Just with like 5 lines of code, he was able to make a lot of that stuff going on there. So I think there's a really good one for people who are completely new to animations to have a look at. So for this one, I need to actually open the right one that he sent me, which was the thumbs up animation. This one. Um, which was the confettifier, right? The confettifier and the with all the spring stuff going on there. Um, so this was a really nice one that showed us how all these modifiers can be used. And then we had Stefan's fancy heart and the fancy clap, rotate, animate animation. Let me see if we can show that as well here, where a lot of stuff was going on there as well. So it was nice. Then we had the beer like button, which we just showed, which had all the stuff in the view model. Trying to see if I have it open here. The beer like button, this one, and with the other approach for the modifiers there as well. And then last but not least, we have the defib heart, which yeah, the thing we mostly looked at there was obviously the keyframe stuff. So yeah, do any of you have anyone that stands out, or should I start?
Um, I'm thinking about whether I should go with the implementation or the actual result, but I think we're all developers here, so I'm gonna go with the implementation. The implementations that stood out the most to me were definitely the defib heart, because it shows the the keyframing technique that we mentioned, and the other one was the fancy heart and clap. Those were the ones
Yeah.
that implementation wise showed more interesting techniques and more advanced techniques, and not that the results don't look good, they also look really good, but all of them look good. So
Yeah.
if I had to pick, I would probably pick those two.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there, because this one also, the one with the hardener clap, also shows the type of complex animations you can do with little lines of code by just like changing these, checking the random degree for the U rotation and stuff like that. What about you, Amos? I know you might be a bit
Yeah.
biased because one of the entries there was Stefan, but
Not really. I really like the animation he created. So if I have to pick anything, I would just pick him as one of them, because it was really well done. And then the next one is the thumbs up animation. Yeah, this one. I also like it a lot. So I would just go with this as well. And
so
are we
I
supposed to choose two, or?
yeah, so I actually forgot because it's Wednesday today. We actually get to pick three, so that's
Oh,
good. So
okay.
I guess then our winners for today are the thumbs up by uh, Brian, and the fancy heart clapping by Stefan, and then the DFAB heart by Ryan. So a little round of applause for all three. Thanks again, everyone, for these really good entries. And I was
Very
thinking,
good.
maybe Amos, can you show a little bit about your how you did yours?
Okay.
I'm
I'll
gonna have
share
to
mine.
figure out how to actually share your screen. So let me turn off my screen sharing, and then I'm gonna make this all. Yeah, so if you could share your screen, then I can bump it up there.
It shows like host
Oh,
disable participant.
yes. Can you try it now?
Yeah.
Perfect. All
Can you
right.
see my screen now?
Yeah, and the nice thing
Yeah,
is that Zoom made my screen full screen as well. So let me have
same
a look.
here.
So, okay,
So I will start with the Twitter
give
and
me
heart animation.
give me one sec
Okay.
so I can actually put your screen in the window capture as well. That's probably this one then. Yeah, I think this is you. So we're seeing, we're seeing it now.
So what I normally do is if I see any animation I'm just interested in, I just take some screen recording, and then I can just deconstruct it, everything here to see what the animation involves.
Mm-hmm.
So as you can see here, if you tap on the icon, it shows a small circle which uses this inner stroke, and then it will just open to be a single stroke, and then it will just disappear before the heart comes. So I normally organize all the layers, and then just know what is involved in the animation. So in this in the SwiftUI one I created, I use the same approach. I use the inner stroke, and then I show the heart, and then I show the splash animation as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I will start from this. I have the SwiftUI app, and then in content view, over here I have set all these initial states, one for the heart, and then here it will just determine whether I have to show the heart or not, and then one for the splash animation. And then at the end of the animation, remove splash is used to just set the opacity of the splash to 0. And this is for the number of likes. And then this is also for the inner stroke. So I have the splash also in another view. So, and I have everything in ZStack.
Mm-hmm.
And over here is just a circle. And then I'm just repeating each circles. And I also rotate each one of them. And then I copied the first one, and then just place it in front of the first one. So I have like 2 of them. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
makes sense with
and
a
then
little
yeah,
offset.
each one of them is just rotated at different angle. So here we have one 45, and then the first one is also 45. That is why we have this little rotation over here. Yeah, and then in content view, I have all the views together. The first one is the heart icon, and then this is the stroke. So in SwiftUI, you can if you need to animate an inner stroke, you can use the stroke border. So it is just the same as the one I showed before in the Twitter screen recording animation. So this will just remove the stroke in the center, and then it will just scale it to the line width to 1 from 35 to 0, so that it will just disappear completely at the end of the animation. And then I have the filled part of the icon is also here at the heart icon. And the next one, I also show the splash view, and then I show all the animation with a tap gesture. Then I put all different kinds of animations here with different delays. Yeah, so the first one is the heart icon, which uses interpolating spring. And then I also show the splash. Like here, it has a delay of 0.1, but this one has no delay at all. And then
What's
at
interesting
the end
here
of the
is that
animation,
so this is basically you're doing the same thing that we've seen with the previous animation with the keyframe technique. So what you're doing this here is effectively the same. I think it's important to point that out, so that especially people who are not used to this. So you
yeah, it's
can
the
have,
same.
like you mentioned, like a bunch of properties where each property is a boolean and it represents a progression of the animation. Or you could even use, like we've seen with the first one, where you have an array of booleans where you basically fill up the array with true as the animation progresses. And you're in your case, you're doing it with different properties. And this is also a way to do basically the same thing. And
Yeah,
for simpler animations, it's probably better even to do it this way, because you don't have to add the complexity of that enum and the stuff that comes with it. So yeah, this is basically another way to do keyframes.
yeah. So if you tap on the icon, then it will just show that way. Yeah. And the last one is the like button that is over here. So initially I set it to an initial value of this, and then if you tap it, then it will just start to increase by 1. Yeah. So that is all about this heart animation. And
Nice,
then
nice.
the next one is this one, the cumulative clap reaction for medium. And that is also similar to the other one as well. I have the same splash. I think I copied that one to here as well. So it is basically the same as the one we had in the Twitter like animation. So they are just embedded in this Z stack. And then I copied this one and placed it just on top of the first one. And then I changed some of the circles to rectangle. And then I use something like I use gradient to just I apply this gradient, linear gradient on the rectangle, the triangle, and that is why they look this way over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to use gradients like that. Like, it's not like someone is gonna be looking at the individual pieces of confetti to figure out what the
Yeah,
color is, but it
yeah,
gives like a little sense of shading, almost like it's a little bit 3D-ish in a
yeah,
sense, and just gives the animation that visual complexity that we mentioned, that just makes it look more full, basically. So yeah, really, really clever technique.
Nice.
Then
All
in
right.
content view, uh, here I set all the initial states, like whether the club is true or false, and then I set another one for moving, and then show splash. Yeah. Then this is the Z tag containing the hand and also the number. And then when we tap, I just use is out because it animates the other views into view. So I think the best is in equation here is using the is out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I see you're inviting the reader to try out different animations there. So yeah.
Yeah. So Amos,
that is the whole thing.
Can you actually add this code to the repo later as well, so that people can also go through this?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
All right.
I'll do that.
I think I'm gonna have to share my screen again so that the position of the windows will be the same, so we can actually do the ending without me having to rearrange everyone. So yeah,
okay.
if you could stop sharing your screen.
Stop sharing.
Perfect. Yeah. And I'll share mine again. It will probably go full screen for the two of you again. All right. Perfect. All right. So yeah, thanks again to Amos and Rambo for taking the time to go through these. I really appreciate like these super clever insights about how it actually works. It's very clear to me that you two really know what you're doing when it comes to animation. So yeah, and I also want to thank all the entries for these different approaches, because I think it really shows that you can do a lot of different things and you can just find the one that works best for you. Yeah, tomorrow we have the fourth event of the SwiftUI series, which is all focused around macOS. I have to admit that it seems like we don't have any entries yet for that one. So maybe usually they come in the last day, but actually we have one entry. So we'll see how that.
One, yeah.
We'll see how that goes, but I guess macOS is one of those things that people haven't really caught on to, how quickly you can now make Mac apps, and all the code for MotionScape is also open source. So the repo is actually linked in the macOS repo as well. So do have a look there if you want to see how to make these more complex apps, and yeah, more. It's like macOS used to be very intimidating for me as well, but last year I figured, oh, let me just try it, and I think I've made 7 macOS apps since then. So yeah, definitely give it a try if you want to do some stuff there. So yeah, Amos, you're going to go to WWDC in 1.5 weeks, so that's probably what you're going to be focused on over the next 2 or 3 weeks. Is there anything else you want to share before we close it off here?
I'm now just preparing. I got my plane ticket, and also I got the hotel, so I'm just preparing to just go. And my team at Stream are also just supporting me to just be there. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, we definitely need to meet up there, but we're already in contact, so we'll see each other on the Sunday before probably. Yeah. And Rambo, what about you? What are you going to be busy with the next month, or what's something you want to share?
Well, I won't be going to Dub, unfortunately, but I hope to be able to go back at some point. I've gone there in 2019, met a lot of people. It was really great, and if people watching have the opportunity, definitely try to go at some point. But yeah, I'm busy with an Airbuddy update and other stuff that's going on, and I guess after the keynote on June 6th, I will be busy with whatever has been announced, which we don't know yet. So probably a bunch of interesting stuff, and hopefully keyframes in SwiftUI. Who knows?
Yeah. So for the people who don't know, AirBuddy is a really useful app for quickly toggling your headphones and other Bluetooth devices from your menu bar. So if you haven't checked that out, definitely check it out. I'll put a link on Twitter afterwards as well. So yeah, thanks again for all the entries, and thanks for our 2 judges. And hopefully I'll see you tomorrow at, I think it's a bit earlier tomorrow, like 12-ish because of the time zones. So yeah, see you soon.